So welcome to another One Yorkshire event. Thank you so much for supporting this and being here. It's great to have you here. So we're doing Facebook advertising today. I do, as always, welcome questions. So please do ask, what do you want to get out of this? Those are the things that I want to know. So the importance of knowing your audience. That's one of the things that I always say. The more you can understand your audience, the more that you can decide who it is that you're wanting to advertise to, the higher chance that you're going to get a return on investment. So that's the key thing, really. So for those that don't know me, I'm Jonny Ross, a qualified optician. It gives me great credibility to be here talking about Facebook advertising, doesn't it? Not quite. We set up an e-commerce site many years ago, selling sunglasses. We were the biggest sunglass retailer for about 5 years, bigger than Shade Station, bigger than Debenhams. Apologies if you've heard this story before. I'm doing quite a lot of One Yorkshire webinars, but I can see that there's new faces on this one, and so it's only fair that they get to know who I am. So yeah, we had an e-commerce site selling sunglasses. We were the biggest sunglass retailer in the UK. We knew that from our buying power, buying more than Debenhams and Shade Station, and it was great. We were the top of Google for everything, every brand of sunglass, every color of sunglass, the word sunglasses, everything. It was brilliant. 2005, sales dropped. Didn't really know why. Didn't look at Google Analytics very often, and we had a look, and it turned out that we'd been pushed to page 7 of Google. No one ever goes to page 7 of Google, and yeah, so we lost 40% of our turnover over an 18-month period. We went through a couple of SEO agencies, but neither of them could solve the problem. It was really frustrating, and in the end, I found a guy in New York who solved the problem in about 2 weeks. So I became really frustrated with the whole SEO industry, and I was a minority shareholder of the business, and it was clear that we needed to invest at the time. So I went off to help businesses understand what this was all about, really. So that's a bit of background on me. I had someone asking a question on so I'll just make that better. There we go. I had someone asking a question on, will the recording be available afterwards? Yes, it absolutely will. So please do take notes, which can always help with learning. But at the same time, it will be fully available afterwards, and I will email it to you. So please do ask questions throughout, and it's great to see you all here. So one of the things that I always say, and again, if you've been to any of my workshops, you'll be very familiar with these next slides. But again, it's so important. Don't do any Facebook advertising until you've been very clear about what it is you're trying to achieve, and making sure that that's really smart as well. So having really clear objectives. Are we looking to increase brand awareness? Are we looking to increase sales? Is that smart? And my answer is no. So it's about having very clear targets, very clear objectives. We're looking to increase sales by, 100 new clients in the next 12 months, so something timely, a number, and those clients will be spending on average X amount. You might have multiple objectives. Depending on whether you've got products or services, those will interlink with each other. So maybe you're looking for a membership organization and you're looking for 1,000 new members in the next 12 months, in the next 3 months. Well, that's fine. So how many type A members spending X amount? How many type B members? And let's split it down into goals. So it's really clear. You've got to have some real clarity on what it is you're trying to achieve. And I have a method which is an Excel sheet. I call it OGSM. And it's splitting down the objectives into goals. It's then suggesting what strategies you might try to meet those goals. So Facebook advertising might be one of those strategies. And it's then about having some measures in place. So what is it we're going to measure success by? So is that the number of clicks? Is it the number of number of times someone sees an advert? Is it based on the click-through rate? Is it based on the purchases? That's what I was looking for. I was looking for, is someone actually going to make the purchase, fill out the form, do whatever it is you're wanting them to do? And that's the next thing to really consider. What is it that you will pay for people to do? Is it to fill out a form? Is it to make a purchase? Is there a secondary thing? Are you wanting people to watch a video, to educate them, to download something, to subscribe to content, to build a list? Let's just find out a bit more about the people that are in the room. So if you're selling, if you're e-commerce, just put e-commerce in the chat for me. If you're selling anything online, e-commerce with a transaction, and brilliant. And I can see lots of chat, but a lot of you still have the panelists selected on your drop down, just so you know. Anyone that's selling, anyone that's doing Facebook advertising already. So maybe you've done it, or maybe you're doing it. So yes, put a yes in the comments if you've done Facebook advertising, or if you've done it in the past, or you're currently doing it, and put a no if you've never done it before. So if you've never done Facebook advertising, but you're considering it, just put a no in the chat for me. So we've got mostly no's, got a couple of yeses. Okay. The people that have done Facebook advertising before, what are you hoping to get out of this? What are you hoping to learn out of this? I'm going to make an assumption. You want to reduce the cost of the advert and get more conversions. Is that fair to say? But let's see what you say. What are you hoping to get? Oh, better engagement. Interesting. Okay. Better engagement. So, and for the ones that have never done Facebook advertising, what are you hoping to get? It might not be obvious for me, so tell me. What is it that you're hoping to get from this session? And let's hope that I can deliver that for you. Any engagement at all? How to do it right? Build clients. Okay. And just going back to this objectives and goals, out of 10, looking at your organization right now, and more so, you can only answer this based on what you've got written down. I don't mean in front of you now, but what you've actually got documented, what you've got written down somewhere. So if you haven't got anything written down, you're going to have to give yourself a 0. If you've got something written down, what score would you give out of 10 on how smart your business objectives are? So what score would you give? Let's have a look. Start with some zeros. Let me just bring this chat in front of me. So we've got a few things here. So learn how to do it right, as I've tried 5 years ago and got 0 business and was using a Facebook specialist. Will it work for appealing to FDs, MDs of 20 million plus turnover business? David Powell, yes, hello. So, I mean, the answer is, will it work? That's a good question, because one of the things that's amazing with Facebook is the targeting, but at the same time, it's also quite difficult to target something like you've just suggested there. So targeting is amazing, but it's based on so much about the person, but not a great deal about the company they work for, depending on the company. So what you've got to do is you've got to really consider those people and really define their interests. And it's good that we're having this conversation, because to get the most out of Facebook advertising, one of the biggest parts is the targeting. You know, we can talk about the ad copy, we can talk about the image, we can talk about the text, and we are going to. We can talk about the landing page and all of those things, and all of those things are important. But actually, what's probably more important is and especially if people are wanting engagement and relevant, is the relevancy. And to get relevancy, we've really got to understand the audience. So, you know, David's question there of appealing to FDs, MDs of 20 million plus turnover businesses, what we've got to try and do is try and get into the mindset of those people. So what are the pages that they may engage with on Facebook? Yes, we could probably define people that are MDs or business owners or FDs based on their job title, but we probably need to take it up a step and think about, who might they engage with. And I guess, the I can't remember the name of it, the IWEC, no, maybe, I don't think that's right, the Institute of Accountants. Maybe an FD will be subscribed to content from the Institute of Accountants, whatever their name is. IWAC, no, and so that would be a way to try and target a bit more. I'm looking for challenges today on who it is you're trying to target, and for us to try and come up with those interests and hobbies and try and define them a bit. Sticking with David's just for a moment, and I'll come to more in a moment. You've talked about senior leaders, I guess they're more likely to have children at university. It's quite generalist, but we've got to do stuff like that to go targeted. And you'd have thought that does put them in a particular position. So it's thinking like that on how you can do it. Whereas LinkedIn, it's much easier to target a particular size of business, particular type of business. But the difference is probably if you can get in front of them on Facebook. And we talk about these micro moments, by the way. So micro moments are those times when someone is having a conversation, someone's watching a TV program, reading a book, listening to a podcast, and they suddenly reach for their phone because they just want to check something. And it's about how can you grab that micro moment. And so Facebook might not be the go-to platform, but they may well go onto Facebook to just quickly check something, or to quickly have a look at a picture of a family member or whatever else. And it's how do you grab that micro moment? So it's about understanding who they are and being there. And if you can grab the micro moment, then there's a very good chance of engagement. So whilst LinkedIn can be a great platform, it might not be where they spend their micro moments. And that's one of the things to bear in mind. You use LinkedIn currently. We've got some zeros. I've got an out-of-date OGSM spreadsheet. Yeah, you've got to go back to it every day or week or month, depending on what it is you're measuring and the strategies. ICA-EW. I reckon I was a bit close. But there we go. So what are you willing to pay people to do? And that's the key question. So we're looking at Facebook advertising and why you should use Facebook adverts. So the thing to bear in mind, if we just look at Facebook adverts versus Google AdWords, there's two very big differences. So, and to be fair, you could apply all the principles that I talk about today on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, the whole lot. I guess Facebook gives you much more in a different way, like I was just talking about, to certainly to LinkedIn, but it gives you so much more than TikTok, Snapchat, even to some extent Instagram, but Instagram is fully managed on the Facebook platform and as Facebook own Instagram. So if you're looking to advertise on Instagram as well, then you would just use this same method that we're talking about today. But the big difference about all those social platforms compared to Google AdWords is that Google AdWords, someone is looking for something there and then. That's what they're after. They type something in and it's about you putting an advert in front of them right there. Whereas Facebook advertising, LinkedIn advertising, social advertising is all about getting in front of the right person, but they might not be and probably aren't necessarily looking for your product or service right there and then. So it's a very different thing. One is there's an intent, and the other one there's not. There's no such intent there right then. So what does a Facebook ad look like? So on a really simple basis, because I can see that some of you have never done Facebook advertising at all, on a really simple basis, it's got a sponsored word. So it says the word sponsored. So it is an advert. And it's got some content. It's maybe got an image or some text. It'll have a button. So depending on the type of advertising you use, depending on the objective you set in Facebook, then that would depend on the whether it's got a button or not, and what those button options are. And it has interaction just like any other status. You can, and the other thing that we should just talk about right at the start is boosting posts and Facebook advertising. And the two are very different. And what Facebook offer is a low-level Facebook advertising. And that's done typically through your page, where you can boost posts. You could even create an advert. But it is really low level. And my advice for any Facebook advertising at all is to make sure that you open a Facebook business account. There's no cost. There's no downside. There genuinely is no downside. In fact, it just opens more doors. It allows you to easily add users. It allows you to manage things in a much better way. But the key thing is it gives you much more data. It gives you many more options. And it just makes it easier for everyone, really. And at some stage, if you wanted someone like me or an agency or whoever to come in and analyze some of the stuff that you've done, because, even if things haven't worked, by the way, in the past, the data you've got is really valuable, because it's sort of like, well, okay, it's not worked. Let's have a look why, and let's understand what it was that you were trying. Okay, let's try something different. So what you need to do is go to business.facebook.com. or just Google business Facebook, and make sure that you, from then on, only sign into your ad account through the business Facebook manager. And you can bring your pages that you own into that business account. You can bring any ad accounts that you've got into that business account. But the key thing is to use the business manager, because it's just so much easier and gives you so much data. Andrew's got a question. If I have a Facebook page, do I really need the website? Well, I mean, yeah, good question. I think, is Andrew a web developer as well? Or am I getting confused? He can't be if he's asking that question, can he? But do you need a website if you've got a Facebook page? I'm going to say that not necessarily, but I think it depends on the business, of course. I think there's some great little businesses out there that work really well from a Facebook page. I think if you're looking to, depending on who you're looking to interact with, and depending on how big you're looking to go, then I think a website is important, because I think, Facebook is only one platform and not everyone uses it, especially there's a certain mindset for some people that they just don't use it from a business point of view. And also, if you're looking to tell a story and build a brand and have some credibility, then I think the website backs that up. Andrew's not a web person. So I think it depends on the size of the business, really. And I think at some stage, a website does take you up a step, is what I would say. Other ways that adverts could look is with a video. So similar story. It's got the sponsored note on it. It's got some text with a video with a click through. And what you'll notice there is just some emojis. I think it's important to just mention that right now, that the reality is that emojis do stand out. And, I've had this conversation even just last week with someone I'm doing some Facebook advertising with, and it's like, I'm not sure we should use emojis, I'm not sure our audience is, that's right. It doesn't feel, and I'm like, they're on Facebook. They're on Facebook. They see it all day, every day. And, whatever you think of them. And in fact, I've got family members that are much older generations that are putting GIFs and emojis and, send all sorts of pictures and what am I trying to say? Animated stuff. And, I think we don't give them the credibility sometimes, some people. So I think, Is that the right word? Credibility? Probably not. So my advice is to use emojis. I think it's about, not necessarily being tacky. It's about using the right ones. There's so many. Let's try and find something that fits with the content and just adds that hook to try and grab the eye, because ultimately that's what you've got to try and do. You've got to try and grab the eye. And I've seen some really good examples. I'm trying to think of some of the things I'm going to show you, but some really good examples actually of where, instead of using maybe a video like this or an image that you've created, actually just a picture of a person in a normal setting can grab someone's eye much more than an advert, because just a picture of a person, it sort of makes it feel like this must be one of my friends. Scrolling down, see a picture of a person, and you just, or a picture of just an everyday picture, and it makes you stop. And there's data on this, so there's think about the picture, and you don't have to create this high resolution advert as such. So that's something to bear in mind. So what are the things that you need to know? What are the things that you need to consider? Well, straight off, I've talked about business Facebook. I've talked about how you need to log into that account. But unfortunately, one of the things that they do is they hide a bit of data. And what you need to do is make sure that that data is fully available to you. So when you get into your account, and once you've set up an advert, so this is after you've set it up though, I must add, you need to turn on a couple of things that are hidden. And I think I show it on this next slide. Yeah. So one of the things that's hidden is frequency. And it's a real important metric. It's a bit like in Google AdWords. They hide, and the phrase has gone out my mind totally. What's the oh my gosh, I'll have to come back to it. It's a good job I'm not doing a Google AdWords presentation, isn't it? It's so annoying. No, that was a bad mistake, wasn't it? Facebook, they hide the frequency. And the frequency is the number of times a user has seen the advert. Now, the last thing you want is for users to start marking your adverts as spam, or to start hiding your adverts, because that gives a really strong message to Facebook that your adverts aren't that great. And this is in some way a bidding war, but it's not just a bidding war at all. And in fact, a really engaging advert can have much more impressions and reach than someone that's paying more than you for something very similar, because Facebook would much rather give an engaging ad to someone, a relevant ad to someone, than something that's not as relevant, that's not as engaging, but yeah, they're paying more for it. But Facebook would still not rather show that. So what happens is that your pricing just goes up, and your reach comes down, and your impressions come down. So the frequency is really important. And what you need to do is you need to go into the Facebook panel once you've set up the advert, go into the columns, click custom, and in there you can edit the columns that are shown. And one of the columns that you need to tick is the frequency. So typically I will keep an eye on things like click-through rate. So that's CTR. I'll keep an eye on the cost per click. I'll keep an eye on the number of clicks, the number of impressions, the total amount spent. I'll be interested in things like the link clicks. I'll also be interested in the engagement on the post as well. But of course, what Facebook does is it shows you metrics that you will think, oh, that's quite good. But are they the important metrics? Are they the ones that you really need to measure? So for example, click-through rate. That's the number of people that see your advert and then click through. So in an ideal world, we want to be, above 5% for that. Now, that's not easy, by the way, at all. And sometimes it's difficult to get above, 0.5%, 1%. You might have campaigns that you can get a 20, 30% click-through rate. But as a total benchmark, the ideal is if we could get to 5%, things are going well. Because what we've got to consider is the people that click through, of course, not all of them convert. And perhaps only 2, 3, 4% of those people may convert. So the numbers are tough at times, but that's an important metric. Going back to the frequency, the number of times the advert's shown, it's a really important metric. So what we don't want to do is show our advert too many times to the same people because they click spam, they click hide this advert. That gives Facebook a message. It costs you more money. You don't get as much reach. The number you're looking for on the frequency is 3. So if your advert is starting to get above 3 on the frequency, then you need to stop it. You need to change something. You need to change the audience. You need to widen the audience. What it typically means is the audience is too narrow, and Facebook is having to show the same advert to the same people because there's only so many people in that audience. So you've got to be careful that you don't have too narrow an audience, but at the same time, having a broad audience means that things probably won't be very relevant. So you need to keep an eye on frequency, and you need to keep it ideally below 3. Do we have any questions so far at all? Any thoughts or? I still want to know the word I was looking for. It's like the biggest measure on Google pay-per-click. And I must tell you, I've been doing some webinars for some people in Singapore this week. And it means that I've got to start the webinars at 4:30 in the morning. So you have to excuse me. I am just like having a crazy week where I'm not getting any sleep, and all I'm doing is talking to Zoom all day. So things aren't coming as they normally would. But I don't think we've got any questions so far, so we'll carry on. So the key to this is the audience, and who is it that you're trying to speak to, and can you define those people? So can you define? We talk about personas and target audiences, and what we need to do is pigeonhole people and think about, well, okay, looking at our current clients, doing some research, looking on LinkedIn. Who are the real people that are going to buy this? And in some other of these workshops, I do quite a bit on personas and target audience. And, as an organization, you might come up with a number of different personas. So we work with a service office provider, and they've given each persona a name. So they have small business Steve, they've got corporate Chris, PA Polly, etc. So they know that corporate Chris drives a BMW, he plays golf, he's got kids at university, and he's going to be buying a serviced office from them. Whereas small business Steve probably is looking for meeting rooms, and they can define him, and PA Polly is probably the PA to corporate Chris or to Steve even, and it's about understanding who that might be, and based on the data they've got, this isn't a sexist thing. It's just based on the data, the facts, and if 80% of people inquiring are inquiring for their boss, and that person is a female, and they're typically sort of 25 to 35, then that's the data you'd use on Facebook to try and target them. And it's understanding their priorities too, and what their pain points are. So you've really, really got to understand the person, and that would be taking it as far as what hobbies, what interests, what pages they like, what their shopping habits are like, what browsers they use, what devices they use, time of day, all sorts of different things. If you can pinpoint some of that stuff, for example, if you're trying to target small business owners that are selling products online, okay, so we're talking Shopify, we're talking Etsy, we're talking so I'm talking micro businesses selling online. So we can say to Facebook, well, okay, people that are interested in Etsy, people that are interested in Shopify, people that use the Facebook payments platform, those are the things that we can start defining. You could define on all sorts of different things. So I found a good link earlier. Let me just bring it up. I won't be able to show you it, will I? But just as some examples. Oh, my mouse, come back, mouse. Okay, so these are sort of weirdly specific Facebook targetings that you just may not have thought of. So some of the things that you can target on is the generation. So are they baby boomers, Generation X, millennials? And that's based on not just on their age, by the way, it's based on what Facebook think. So it's based on, and Facebook have a huge amount of data. I could scare you and show you the data they've got, but they know, pretty much every website you go on. They know what you do on the website. They know what you're buying. They know, what time of day, what browser, all sorts of stuff. They know your location. They know if you're going into a shop or a cafe. They know if you're on the motorway. They know if you're driving. How do they know all this? Well, if you've got location on and you've got a reasonable amount of privacy open, then, Facebook can see exactly what's going on. Now, things are going to change in the Apple is going to be limiting some of this in an update that's coming out later this year. And it will have some impact on reach and it will have some impact on attribution. But in the grand scheme of things, you can, you can really go to town on painting a picture of the ideal audience. And one of the things that we'll also talk about is the Facebook pixel. And that's about having a pixel on your website that starts understanding who the people are that visit your website and what data Facebook has got on those people, and using that to create an audience as well. And you can create lookalike audiences, and we'll get into some of that. And if you've got questions, please ask, because there's so many different topics here. So how do you add the pixel? Brilliant question, but I'm not going to spend time on answering it now. I hope you don't mind. Best thing to do is Google how to add the Facebook pixel. The short answer is you go into Business Manager and you go to the pixel section and you create a pixel, gives you a bit of code, give it to your web developer, it gets added to your website. And that pixel sits there on every page. And if, for example, I go to your website and I'm also logged into Facebook on that device, well, Facebook knows that I'm on that website. And what it does is it collects data to say, well, okay, on your website, most people are male. They are, between the age of 35 to 65. And actually, do you know they're into Doctor Who and they like reading Ben Elton books? I mean, it's that detailed. It's crazy. It is crazy. And that's the way to think about how can I define the audience? And one of the, I mix with a lot of bloggers online. And one of the things that's sort of being bandied around at the moment is actually, if you can go to sort of a real niche, like the, Doctor Who, Ben Elton book, whatever else, you've actually got a higher chance of conversion there, because what you're not doing is going for the same audience that everyone else is going and not going for some of those niches. So it's in my Google search anyway. That's crazy. Yeah, it is crazy. Yeah. It doesn't give you, it doesn't give you my name, and it doesn't give you it doesn't go down to a personal level. It gives you group data. And typically it'll say, so things, so I don't know if you've seen, we'll also talk about audience insights, and Facebook have if you Google Facebook audience insights, you can use that to start defining an audience. And what's really interesting there is that you can find out, for example, the radio stations that people listen to, the newspapers they watch, the films they watch, did I say newspapers they watch? Newspapers they read, the podcasts they listen to, and it starts painting pictures, their favorite shops, their favorite place for coffee, and it starts painting a picture that you can then use that data inside an ad campaign to say, okay, well, based on the data, Facebook's saying that, actually, if I'm looking for HR managers, Facebook's saying that most HR managers also listen to, I don't know, Radio 5, whatever it might be. And you can then use that to target, to make it a more of a niche advert, if that makes sense. So let me just, so I was giving you some examples. So you can I only got to one example. People with upcoming anniversaries. So you can, for example, people that have got an anniversary in the next 30 days, you can target them. You can target people on their technology adoption. So for example, do they have Hotmail email addresses, MSN email addresses, Yahoo email addresses, or have they got Gmail and company email addresses? Are they early or late adopters? How many household members do they have? Friends with people with anniversaries. You can target small business owners. You can target people that have got a new job and when did they get that job? You can target people that are in new relationships, so newly engaged in the last year, in the last 3 months, in the last 6 months. Newlywed, when did they get married? You can target people that have created events on Facebook. So if they've created an event, they're more likely to be some kind of business owner or some kind of event organizer or something around that audience. People that have traveled recently, target parents, so how old their children are. So you can say, well, okay, I'm looking for parents that have got a baby between the 0 and 12 months, or I'm looking for parents that have got children between 3 and 5 years old. So if you can define, typically going back to David's point, FD's 20 million turnover, well, they're probably going to have grown-up children at university. They're not going to have children that are 3 to 5 years old in general, and we do have to be in general, and we do have to pigeonhole. Other things that you could target is technology interests. So what type of, are they a Mac user or are they a Windows user? Political interests, whether they use the Facebook payment platform, that gives you an insight into whether they are online retailers, e-commerce, whether they sell something from a Facebook page. What type of browsers do they use? So is it, are they Safari, i.e. on Macs, or are they, old school, are they developers and people that are using Firefox? Or are they just an older generation that are using Microsoft Edge or Internet Explorer? So those are the things that you can do, and you can even target people that attend events. So you can advertise to people that typically so they see an event advert. Do they actually convert? And you can target those people. So if you're trying to sell an event, those are the ones you want to convert, aren't those are the ones you want to speak to? I've talked to you about targeting email, the type of email domains. Are they expats? Do they live away? I've got about 5 more, by the way. So what type of mobile phone do they use? Are they friends of people that like your page? So you can target people that like your page. You can target people that have friends of people that like your page. You can target by the computer's operating system, whether they support sporting events or, what's their favorite football team. That all of this stuff is fully available, and it's really simple to set up as well. I'm guessing because most of you have none as a setup, maybe it's handy for me to show you. I am going to do this actually. So let me just do a new share and show you this screen. So I'm grabbing this, by the way, from this web page here. I'll put it in the chat. Can you see the Firefox screen? Can you see my browser now? Just confirm if you can or not. Yeah, okay. And I'll just put that link of just some sort of weird and Facebook targeting ideas. And the last one was the combination, by the way. So that's about saying, look, in fact, I was just bringing something up here. So if I go into the ads manager, and what I was just coming up with here is playing with a target audience. So I was saying, let's just move some things out of the way so I can control this a bit better. So here I can change the age to, I'm looking for 36 to over 65s, and I'm actually looking for men, HR administrators or whatever, who are also in. Now, let's just be clear here. So, because it's important you understand this. So this is basically saying, are they a HR manager or are they Doctor Who fans? So they don't have to be both. This is saying that they can be one or the other. Now, of course, that's probably not what you're after. What you want to do is you might want to say, well, I want them to be this and I want them to be this. So here I've said, HR managers or Doctor Who fans, but also they must also like John Lewis. And there's just so many. If you've never been in here before, it's pretty niche. Or is it though? It's not. Let's have a look. It's 11,000 people. All right, fair point. It's pretty niche. But there's just so many things in here. So if you go to browse, there's all the different things that you could look at, and some of the, a lot of the things that I've been talking about, and you can just start searching. So parents, and why isn't that working? Oh, there we go. It's just going slow for some reason. So here you can see, parents with adult children, parents with teenagers, parents with pre-teens, parents, new parents. I mean, the data is pretty crazy. What's a helicopter parent? No idea. But and also you can target pages that have, I think, more than 100,000 likes are included in there. So any brands that have more than 100,000, it's either 10,000 or 100,000. I think it's 100,000 would be included in there. So if you can think of, well, I know that, if I'm trying to target, students in Leeds, then they're probably going to like the Skyrack pub. I'm going back a long way here and it's not even there, so we'll forget it. But you get my point. I can't find it. So, but you get my point that you can really, really home in and target the right people. And just to show you, this is Business Manager. It's a different view than you'd have in Facebook. And what I also wanted to share with you was this link. And I'll send you this. I'll put this in the chat, because one of the things that is really difficult to understand is the objectives that you need to set. So when you first set up a campaign, one of the things that you've got to do is decide on what type of campaign it is. And here you've got a list of all the different types of campaigns that you could set up. So you've got sort of awareness campaigns, consideration campaigns, or conversion campaigns. And what these do are they define the way the advert works and the type of advert. So for example, will it have a button? Is it going to take you off Facebook or not? And that's something that we need to consider. So I've just given you a bit of insight there. Do we have any questions at all before I move on to the next part? So Lucille's just asked a question. I set up a Facebook manager account, but don't think I did it correctly. I've not run any adverts yet. So is it possible to remove it and start again? Short answer is yes, totally. You can either, if you've not done it in the business account, you can move it into the business account. Alternatively, you can just set up a new one. So yeah, no problem at all. I wouldn't worry too much. And as I say, in an ideal way, if you've not started yet, do it inside the business manager account, because it'll just be a lot better for the long term and a lot easier. So let me just switch back to my slides. So that should do that. There we go. So if we've talked about the audience, and just to reiterate, because one of the things that I didn't mention, which I should have, is that you can pinpoint on location. So you can go to a postcode specific and just sort of 5 miles within a postcode. You can set multiple locations. So you can say, I'm only targeting people in Manchester, Leeds, and London. So you've got quite a scope on being able to decide on location. As we've talked about, the interest, the gender, the age, and the interest is wide, as we've talked. And then what you don't want is anything too broad, and you don't want anything too niche. So it's about finding that good balance, and and Facebook does help you try and achieve that to some extent. Here we've looked at, people that have a phone that are interested in an Apple Watch, and it's an iPhone 6, so it's a bit old, that, isn't it? But they also are into going to the gym, and they also are shoppers at Asda. So you can be very specific, and it's really trying to get into the mindset, and it's about testing and trying different things. So the next thing that we need to think about is the messaging. So what does the messaging say? Is it, again, thinking of the audience, and like I said earlier, using some emojis, but what does the message say and how do you create that engagement? So one of the ways to create engagement is make sure you ask a question. That's really important. But it's about, talking, you don't want to just come across as just sale, sell, sell. It's about really understanding the people and understanding the pain points and how your product or service fixes that and fits in. So that's the key thing. It's about how can you help them? What are the benefits, and using those benefits and talking about their pain points and asking a question. So it might be that you start with a question based on their pain point, and then you can have some text underneath that. But it's also about thinking about, what's your headline going to be? So if we go right back to a slide earlier on and we have a look at the contents, we've got a number of different places of content. We've got the contents at the top, but then at the bottom, we've got a description and a headline, and we can also control the URL that's shown as well. So here so it says autonomous.ai/smart desk. Now we might not be sending them to the page where the URL actually has /smart desk. But what you can do is you can edit the URL to decide what that actually looks like. You can control the wording for the title, the wording for the description, and the wording at the top as well. So, and with all of this, I always suggest trying two different variants. So whether that's two different audiences or two different pictures or two different messages or two different call to actions, always do some testing and put one against the other, so that after a week you can say, well, okay, actually, this one did better. This one had a higher conversion rate. This one had a higher number of clicks. This one had a higher impressions, higher reach, higher engagement, whatever it is you're measuring. And you can say, well, okay, this one worked better, so I'm going to use this picture, and I'm going to try it with this audience, or I'm going to put more money on it, and I'm going to reduce the money on the other picture, if that makes sense. So if we fast forward back to, we're looking at the audience, thinking about the message, the next thing to think about is the call to action. What is it we want people to do? What's the thing that we want them to do? And that goes back to what are the goals, but you need to tell people what to do. You have to give them a clear call to action. So is it to click the button? Is it to, what is it you want them to do? Be really specific, because people only do what you ask them to do or what you tell them to do. So make sure you've got a very clear call to action. The other thing to consider is, where are you taking them to? So what does the landing page have the same experience as the advert? Does it have, am I going to get disappointed when I'm there? Because if I am, that's not a good thing. So it's got to flow through, and whatever you're saying in the advert and the sort of even the look and the feel, I've got to sort of, to some extent, get a similar thing when I get to your website or landing page. But what you might also want to consider is actually not taking people off Facebook and actually just doing a lead gen, what we call a lead gen campaign, where you can use Facebook to generate a lead by getting their contact details. So ultimately, they've seen an advert, they click it, and all they're taken to is a Facebook form where Facebook auto-populates their name and their email address or even their phone number. So that's so it's worth bearing in mind and thinking about, what's the experience? What am I getting people to do once they've clicked? Because that's very important, and there's things to really consider there. As I said, we need to consider split testing, so testing one against the other and trying different things. So here's a couple of different adverts, but what we've done is we've changed the text. Just a really simple thing, just changing one thing. We've just changed the wording. And, one of them talks more about newlyweds, and one of them talks about marriage advice. So it's a similar audience because they've just got married, but it's just changing the words very slightly. So what are the things that you can test? Another example would be testing maybe 2 different videos. So here we've got, as I said, 2 different videos, and you can then have a look at the results. And maybe you're testing on different ages. So here we've tested on a 33 plus audience. Below it's on a 55 plus audience. One of the things, by the way, is to really think about naming your as you go through Facebook. You have to give the campaign a name, you have to give the advert set a name, and then you have to give the ads a name. So you have a campaign, and then inside that you might have 2 different audiences. So that's the advert sets. And then within the advert sets, you might have 2 or 3 different adverts that are shown to those audiences. So you've got the campaign, the advert sets, which are typically 2 or 3 or 4 different audiences, or even just one audience. And then that goes down to the adverts, and you've got a number of adverts for each advert set. And my advice is to make sure that when you're naming these things, you just make it so much easier for yourself. So you put some descriptive things into the name of the advert set or the name of the advert, so that you don't have to dig in and look at the advert to see what it was, because it's only you that sees this, and that can make it a lot easier. So what are the things that you're wanting to track? How are you going to assess this and see if things work? And there's a few different ways of tracking. You can track within Facebook advertising, but my advice is to also track in Google AdWords as well. Sorry, Google Analytics as well, because Facebook will only show you what's going on and what they want you to see. And you can put something called a conversion pixel on your website, which is basically a bit of code that goes on the checkout page or the thank you page, that sends some data back to Facebook and says they've done what we wanted. So that sends it back to Facebook, and it helps you understand the data within inside Facebook. And you should set that up. But at the same time, you should set it up so that the data goes to Google Analytics, so you can see what Google says has really happened on your website. And then it's about triangulating the two. And I think in this case, I think I'm trying to remember exactly what happened. And I think one of the things that we saw going on in Google Analytics was actually very different to what we'd seen on Facebook, or the other way around. And you could end up making the wrong assumptions. So I think it was to do with click-through rates, and it was to do with the number of people that it was to do with the so it was to do with the one of the audiences had a much higher click-through, a much higher impression, but actually when they got to the website, they didn't really perform much action at all. But if you hadn't looked at that data, you'd have carried on plowing money into what was perceived to be a good campaign, because there was a really good click-through, but they weren't interacting when they got to the website. And actually one of the campaigns that had a much lower click-through rate, much lower impression share, was engaging much more when they got to the website. So it's really important to have a look at that data. I talked about audience insights. If you Google audience insights, you can basically search Facebook's database, and from that you can create audiences to advertise to. And as I said, if you have a look at an audience, it then gives you detail on that audience. So if you have a look, for example, at a job title or something like that, and it tells you about their relationship status, their education level, the typical job function they're in, and that obviously that wouldn't be based on a job title, but this would be based on maybe just a particular demographic, so a particular age, a particular sex, or even to saying, right, okay, tell me about all the people that have an iPhone. Yeah, so this is all the people that have an iPhone that are female between the age of whatever, and it says, well, okay, here's the people that have an iPhone that are between the age of 30 and 40. Well, this is their relationship. So typically, 44, there's more married people in this audience than there is across Facebook. There's more people at high school. There's more people in a management scenario. And if you go deeper into the data, it'll tell you what they read, what they watch, etc., etc. We talked about the Facebook pixel. So that's about having a pixel on your website that then gives you the ability to be able to create an audience based on the types of people that go to your website. And that can be really helpful. And even if you aren't about to start Facebook advertising today, my advice is to install the pixel, because it's just sat there collecting data so that at some point in the future, you can use that data. Because doing it the other way around, it won't let you do it until you've got a reasonable amount of data. And that's typically, I think it's 1,000, a minimum of 1,000 sets of data. So the sooner you can put that in, the sooner it can start learning. The bigger the data set, the more accurate it becomes. The other thing that you can do is you can remarket. So here you can basically say, look, if someone's been on my website, we can then start showing adverts to those people. So here's going right back to the beginning, David was asking me about FDs. One of the things that you could do is you could even just do a remarketing campaign where they've been on your website. And because they've been on your website, you start showing adverts to them on Facebook, because a lot of the time people need to see things 7 times before they actually perform an action. And so one of those things is remarketing, which tends to be a lot cheaper. You're only doing it to people that have seen your website before, and you've got to be careful that you don't overdo it. So make sure the frequency doesn't start going too high on that. But remarketing can really work. So we're sort of coming to the end of the webinar here. So I don't know if there's any further questions at all. I appreciate the time that you spent with me. If you do have questions, now's the time to ask. I'm very happy to answer questions afterwards as well. And those that know me, if you just look for me on LinkedIn or on my website, you're very welcome to ask me questions. Just before you go, there's just a few things that I want to share with you. So first of all, there's many more events coming up, and I'll just send you a link to that so you can have a look at the other Yorkshire Mafia events that are coming up. I have my own podcast, which I've just put a link to in the chat, just up a couple on the chat. I'd love you to be a listener and come and join me, and you should find it on any of your favorite platforms. That would be amazing if you fancy joining me. We've also got a networking club on Facebook, and you'll find me in there, and you can certainly ask me more questions. We'd love you to be there. If you want to be inspired and learn more from other like-minded entrepreneurs, then please join the Facebook group. Just got another question there. So Hannah, if you had £10 to spend on a small campaign, what would you suggest? And same with 20. And what would you do? What do you think is a good budget? Okay, well, it's a good question actually, and probably a disappointing answer for you. So £10, £20, it's great to boost a post, and you might get something from it. The bad news that I probably need to tell you is that to really do a decent campaign on Facebook and to get a decent amount of data that helps you decide if something's worked or not and helps you plan going forwards, you probably need to be spending more like £300 per month to give you some idea. When we do campaigns for anything less than that, or if you're doing your own campaign for anything less than that, 9 times out of 10, you turn around to someone afterwards and you say, well, okay, did it work? And the answer is they've no idea, because the data is just too small. And it might have done something, but, have a go. It's a bit like, going into a casino or going into the fruit machines and having a play. You might win, you might not. Has it helped you understand what to do in the future? Probably not. So I'm not sure that answer is really what you wanted, Hannah. But I've got to be real with you and say that, to get a real proper data set, you need a minimum, I think, of £300 a month. Thank you so much for joining me. There is 2 things before you go. There will be a recording which will be sent out later, if not this afternoon, tomorrow morning. I do need some sleep at some point. And thank you so much for being here. When I close this webinar, you will get you'll be taken to a link where you can let me know what you thought, give me some feedback, and because that really helps me grow and learn. And I really appreciate you being with me. So thank you so much, and I will see you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.